Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Storytelling Alchemist show. It's here every week at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And so I'm here to tell you about my guest tonight. Pretty excited. He's been on one of my previous shows prior to it being on the LA Tribune, Soul Talk. And so he's a guest on my show again tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He is the author of this book, Citizen King, The New Age of Power. He is a revolutionary and an energy master, an Emmy nominated, just an amazing person all around. I'm going to bring on Jensen, everybody, and thanks for tuning in like you do every week. And so let me bring on our guests. Hi, Les, how's it going?
It's going really good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. It's been a couple of years. I think it's been like 4 or 5 years when we had you on for your Forgiven Sinner book. Now it's been, I guess, like 5 years now, hasn't it been?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, good stuff. So I just kind of want to jump right into it. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff in here. The title of this book just really grabs you in. I mean, the first thing is big red letters, King, and then Citizen King, which doesn't generally, those two terms don't generally go together, citizen and king. But then you say the new age of power. And so what I'm grasping from what I'm reading in this book, the power is about our own inner power. Am I correct?
Oh,
and
sure.
About how we embrace our lives.
Indeed. I mean, the old style is of a king is dominion over another. And this book is not about that whatsoever. But the idea that the decision-making process, the planning process of the collective is handled by a small group of people. And I think 2020 has shown us that all of that's been turned on its head, so to speak. And how do you feel satisfied? How do you feel happy? That's an inside job for humanity to feel good about itself. It's going to happen within us. And Citizen King puts the attention right there. As a citizen of humanity, if you will, when I give myself the sovereignty and dominion to say it's up to me how I feel, then I take ownership of what my life looks like, what my potential looks like. And that's really the only thing that's going to anchor us in a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in our life.
Yeah, and you talk about in the book the term persona.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about what that means and what persona is?
You bet. I wanted to choose a term that didn't have an emotional context to it. I thought about avatar, but actually persona is a term that I use to personify, pardon the pun, the totality of who we are. For example, the cosmic 2x4 cracked me open 25 years ago because I had an immense amount of anger in my subconscious. Now, when I think of myself as a human being, I often think flesh and bones and maybe an ego, but I had this gigantic amount of anger in my subconscious. So when I talk about a persona, it's about the junk in my trunk. It's the unresolved subconscious. It's like the totality of my multidimensional aspect of myself, if that makes sense.
So all of us are, as a person, as a soul, and as a spirit, and across whatever terms we want to come up with that.
Well, like, if you have a sense of bitterness or you're constantly angry, that's part of your persona, but it doesn't have a physical attribute. So if I say I'm a human being, most people associate that with the body. The persona encapsulates all aspects of ourselves, our attitudes, our emotions, our struggles, everything.
So let's talk real quick, because one of the things that you talk about, or at least I'm gathering here, is that we bring things up in the term of the body, of course, But also we look at other people, like you've had a very rich career, not just in your spiritual career, but you had a pretty rich career in broadcasting. And so to many people, that would disempower, if they were going out there, they would look at you and say, oh, Les has done everything. How can I possibly do the things that he's done? And then they therefore disempower themselves. And so how does one change that within themselves to build into their own sovereignty?
Well, don't measure your life by anybody else at all. The every I believe your soul chooses the dynamic of your life. A calm sea has never made a skilled sailor. And so if you look at some of the dynamics of the more powerful and charismatic people, they've been through the ringer, so to speak. And a lot of times our ego will tag struggle as some kind of negative. Certainly my life dynamic has some difficult times in it. And that's what helped me make me who I am. If you're bumping up against rough times in your life, it's not that's not going to be the deciding factor about whether you have satisfaction and fulfillment in your life. And we're not always used to seeing it that way. But if you look at it as an opportunity to grow, to recognize a bigger sense of yourself, you can come away from a big struggle having a much deeper sense of identity, a much deeper sense of who you are as a soul personified, that you really truly are bigger than any of your problems. And that can give you a sense of comfort.
Yeah, you bring up really one of the things you mentioned in the book is you say that I can't remember exactly how you say it, but you said your life is waiting basically for you to be the king of your kingdom. And I know I'm messing that up a little bit, but it's at the end of the chapter where you're talking about dreams.
Sure. Well, you've got the best seat in the house. Well, wait a minute. I'm seeing this guy over here and he's living the fantastic life. How can I have the best seat in the house? Well, what do you want to feel? What do you want to feel? You want to feel happy? You want to feel satisfied? When that actually happens, where is that going to happen? Right here inside your own persona. So whether you succeed or fail, it's going to be right where you're sitting now. This persona is the vehicle of your experience. So you dream of a fantastic life for yourself. You've got the body for it. You've got the persona. You've got the incarnation, if you will, to fulfill that. So don't look at anybody else's life and think that you're somehow shortchanged in how wonderful you can feel about your life.
So step into your sovereignty.
Yes, indeed. Well, your ego cannot really comprehend just how many options, how many possibilities there are for the trajectory of your life. I mean, in the book, I talk about a cosmic 2x4 cracking me open. That was 25 years ago. And had you talked to me before that happened, well, who are you? Well, I'm a broadcast television engineer. And that was enough for me. And then the cosmic 2x4 cracked me open like a bug on the windshield. And now I've written a bunch of books and I'm a radio show host. And I'm very, very passionate about helping people understand that there's a fire inside of us. There's an infinite well, a tireless well of potential, of inspiration, of ideas of what our life could be. And yet our egos is the lowest common denominator. If our ego can't step aside and allow that to flow through us, we can get stuck in our own way, so to speak, if that makes sense.
It does. I was just laughing because I have a friend that calls that 2x4 treatment. She says, well, when the universe gives you 2x4 treatment, then you start to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I got the 2x4 across the forehead. My life
Yeah,
is so much richer now and fuller now.
you and me both. You and me both. It really starts to getting used to going, oh, wait a second, there's another way to do this. So, what role? So we're in the line. I'm in the subject of dreams. What do how do dreams play a role in your fulfill our life purpose? And I guess that'll lead into my next question: how do we discover our life purpose?
Well, very nice. Our egos cannot comprehend what is possible in our life. It's impossible for our ego to see the big picture of what's possible. So, how does our soul communicate to us? It's kind of like dangling a carrot in front of us. Come on, trust yourself just a little bit. Here's a dream of what can happen in your life. Here's a snapshot of what your life could be if you just let go and trust. So, our dreams are a vehicle that our soul uses to entice us to step into our power, step into our potential, to have some trust in that we are hardwired to create the life that we want. And so, to your second question, your life purpose. Well, to be honest, before the cosmic 2x4 hit me, I would have said, I'm here to work in TV. But working in TV was setting me up for my real life purpose. Now, in broadcast television, I worked on very high power television transmitters. We paid $7,000 a month in electricity. I'm
Wow.
talking about a lot of power, 1,000,000 watts of power. And as a kid, I'm 20 in my early 20s, and I'm standing in front of these really powerful machines. And I'm like, what's going on here? I had to wrap my noggin around what power is. And then the cosmic 2x4 cracks me open. And I end up writing a book, The New Age of Power, Citizen King, The New Age of Power. How can I talk about power unless I had a personal experience with it? So your life purpose might not be obvious to you now, but trust. You can get an idea of where you're supposed to be right now by your excitement. What gets you excited? What draws your attention to it? If you start paying attention to that, you'll start to notice the topics and the elements that you get excited, and that excitement that is the measuring stick, so to speak, that you're moving towards the direction of your life purpose.
So it really comes down to everybody's always struggling to find their life purpose, and it really needs to come as it comes. And your life purpose is really just to be where you're at right now in the present moment, and allow.
It can evolve over time.
Yeah.
I'm open to my life changing completely. It's not for me to say. My ego cannot understand what my life can be, and so I don't want my mind to be the keeper of my purpose. If that makes sense.
No, I totally relate to that because my life is, well, all of us, our life has changed so much. I mean, I'm 47 now. I think I've had like 4 careers now, and it's just because it evolves and keeps on going. So that's interesting in a sense that the working in engineering and all the electrical stuff that you work with, that led you into another phase of your life, and gave you the foundation, so to speak, to be where we are at right now.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
It's a curious thing because for my whole life I've been very curious about this, our human nature. Why do we choose what we choose? Even at the age of 16, when I got my driver's license, I remember driving an hour to to the airport in Salt Lake City, and I would just sit and watch people. I was fascinated by our human demeanor. And there's that excitement, there's that curiosity at the age of 16. I've been fascinated about our human demeanor. And then now I'm writing about our human demeanor and how we get kind of in our own way, how we get stuck, and then what we can do to unravel that.
Good stuff. It's good stuff. I love how our journey takes us, and
Yes.
really takes us on these different epiphanies, I guess, and ways of thinking. So, you talk about the storyline of the collective consciousness, and is changing. Why do you think there is a changing what do you think that we're going through, and as a collective, and with this change, and basically, where do you think we're going with this change? Because I do feel a lot of energy of change right now.
Sure.
And a lot of people talk about different theories about what's going on, but where do you think we're going with this?
I think we're kind of going through puberty. We're going through our teenage years in a very condensed way. If you look at the collective narrative, we've got some karmic train wrecks in how our culture has been structured. The notion of a currency, the financial foundation of money. We have one currency, and didn't that crash in 2008? And everybody's cart tipped over because we take that currency and we put our job, we put our what kind of a house we can have, what kind of vacation, what kind of education, and then we gamble over what the value of the currency actually is. Is that not psychotic? Is that not the most screwed up thing you could ever imagine? So humanity cannot exist in the long term under that model. And that's the idea behind Citizen King. We're not to follow kings anymore. We're not to follow these monolithic structures where we all turn our brains off and get in line and walk in goose step with each other. The inherent nature of nature is to evolve and to expand. So I see it as a really powerful opportunity. Right now, we're at the precipices, we're at the doorway of completely new paradigms being created. And as a vehicle of commerce, that's trillions of dollars of opportunity that are being created from people wanting a more authentic, a more genuine narrative for us to base our future on.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense when you think about even the current environment of the world. Everybody is, I just put a post up today, everybody's screaming loudly to be heard.
Yes.
And I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to have to learn how to go within, as you mentioned, it's an inside job. Listen to their own authentic self, their own, whatever you want to call it, inside, and find themselves. But I think exactly what you're meaning, we're going through that puberty, because we're just much like somebody that's going through puberty, they're trying to figure themselves out.
Right.
They're going through all those growing pains, and and sometimes they're drama queens. I remember my teenage years, I was not exactly, my mother, I'm not sure how she made it through it. But she did. And so, and that's kind of what the world looks like right now. You're seeing an awful lot of interesting things going on. Let's just put it that way.
Sure, indeed.
So.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of the shadow of the subconscious, if you will, of our collective. There's some pretty ugly stuff. I've worked in the media now for 35 years. I promise you, the mainstream media is not showing you the vast majority of our persona, of our collective persona. We've got some junk in our trunk, and when that starts to get revealed here, and it has been over the past, but I think it's going to perhaps accelerate for a while. People are going to be appalled and said, we can't do this anymore. And so the notion of citizen king, how can we live, how can we create an authentic future if we surrender our ability to create our life outside of us? The whole point of the notion of citizen king is to understand that if your ego's running your life, you're probably not going to hit the mark very well as far as your potential. But we can kind of OD on our ego, and that, I believe I got cracked open by the cosmic 2x4 because I was completely in my head. Because once I got cracked open, my heart says, let's write a book. And my ego says, no way, no way, no way. And so I had to teach my ego, and that's what this book is about, to teach the ego how much the ego will enjoy its life if it lets go of the steering wheel and lets your heart and soul drive. That's when the good stuff happens.
Well, it's kind of like let go and let it flow, I guess is the way to put it in some ways, because the ego has its purpose, but its purpose is not to dominate your life, and it's supposed to work in unison.
Yes.
With your id, so to speak, or some people say the divine feminine, divine masculine, whatever. They're supposed to be dancing together, and going on this journey together. So very, very cool. I just want to point out, I haven't pulled up your website. I'm just going to pull it up really quick and just put the banner up here so everybody can see it. I have your lesjensen.com, but you also have one, newhumanliving.com.
Right.
And so, for everybody that's out there, I would definitely go to lesjensen.com. And I'm assuming, I didn't look on here, that you can buy your book here. Yep, books right there. And access to your radio show. Now, is the radio show, is it a podcast or is it on a certain time every week? Or
I just finished this week's episode. I mean, minutes before I joined this show, I just finished up this week's. My show's on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Mountain, and we're coming into our 11th year with hundreds and hundreds of episodes. And the premise behind the New Human Living radio show is the empowerment of you, very much like the book Citizen King, The New Age of Power.
Yeah, I remember when we were booking you for the show, Sarah said, well, let me check. That's the night his show is. I just remember that. So I'm assuming Citizen King you can find on Amazon?
Sure.
And also at your website at lesjensen.com. So so when we're thinking about our empowerment of ourselves, and stepping into that citizen king part of your life, and you're building that inside of yourself, where does the family dynamic kind of fit into that? I mean, does that where we get all of our programs and all of our, where you had mentioned you had a lot of anger,
Sure.
Is that where that came from, as family dynamics, or some of it came from that? Or
well, I think our soul chooses what family we're going to be born into. If I look at my family dynamic, my dad was a World War II vet, and I'm sure in the foxhole of World War II, he was forced to do some extremely brutal things. And I'm sure that made him very angry, because the brutality of war can't sit well in anybody's heart. Mm-hmm. And fast forward, and now he's my dad. When my dad would get mad, he'd cut you in half with his eyes. It never hit us, mm-hmm. but when he got mad, it was game over. And so I learned at a very young age that if I were to arouse my father's anger, the whole family would be afraid. So I learned subconsciously to just stuff it. And so I'd never let myself show anger. Understand this. I had a huge amount of anger in my subconscious, and my ego had no idea it was even there. My ego was scared to death of anything that might bring about an angry response. And so I go through my day and my boss had belittled me and I couldn't challenge him because I might get mad. I might want to fight with my spouse at the time and I'd concede because I might get mad. And so here was this emotional component in my psyche that I was not aware of. And it was deciding many, many choices all through my day. My life was actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
So every time you didn't speak up or speak your mind or speak your truth or whatever was going on in your heart, it would push it down and make your energy smaller. Yeah.
That's right. And that's what led to the cosmic 2x4. I wasn't being authentic with myself. And so my soul chose a family dynamic that was based in anger. And there was a religious component to it where I wasn't to think for myself. It was kind of like a Twilight episode where the whole flippin' community had the same answer no matter what question I asked. Everybody had the same answer. And I'm like, does anybody have their own sense of what they think? And so it really challenged me to question everything. And by questioning everything at a very early age, I think that's why a lot of my writings are not really the mainstream, but it's kind of a fresh perspective of what's happening in our human story.
Yeah, I mean, your last book was Forgiven Sinners, so I mean that's definitely not what we hear on mainstream. So it's one of those things where people are like, Forgiven Sinner. I have to get that from my priest, so, and then just probably throws people a little bit for a loop. So any last minute thoughts that you would like to let the listeners or viewers know about before we kind of wrap up tonight?
Well, sure. Learn how to enjoy today. You want to enjoy your life? Figure out what you can enjoy today. If you learn how to find joy today, you'll be in fine form to find and joy tomorrow. And if you keep it up, you might just end up enjoying your whole life.
Awesome. That's awesome stuff. And by the way, real quick, I just want to remind everybody, Citizen King is the book that we were talking about tonight that you can get at lesjensen.com, which I have down in the description of the show and also here on the screen. I also want to point out my next guest, I'm just going to kind of give everybody, is my friend Victor Peruta will be on next week on the 4th. And on the 11th, I will have my friend Mama Gina come on, or Gina Lamont come on, and she's going to be playing some music. It'll be really great. And as everybody knows, this show will be on demand on the Los Angeles Tribune, Roku TV network very shortly. And Les, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and much success. And when your next book comes out, we'll just have you on the show again.
Very nice. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Much love, everybody, and thank you again for watching every week here at 10 p.m. Eastern.